Planned Obsolescence. 9 Microfictions written and narrated by John Van Stan. 1. Posthole. The cornfield steamed in July's heat, while a farmer swung his posthole digger like a piston. Hank worked by the logic of earth and muscle. At sunrise, he'd already strung twine between cedar stakes, marking a fence line that ran straight as a rifle shot across the crop stubble. Now, with the sun climbing and cicadas droning, he drove the posthole digger in rhythm. Stab, pry, lift. Stab, pry, lift. Soil breathing out its damp, root-sweet smell each time the blades parted. He heard the difference as he felt it. A duller thunk, a woody protest. He paused, weight on the handle, brow knitted. Not annoyance, but appraisal. Cottonwood feeder root, maybe thumb thick. Cuttable. He rolled his shoulder, widened his stance, and the cadence changed. The swings came down harder. Elbows loose, wrists snapping at the bottom so the blades bit with a carpenter's precision. Anyone watching would see a man who knew exactly how much punishment both root and tool could take. There was, too, a small tremor beneath his flannel pocket each time the handles reached their apex. A phone's haptic murmur, initially lost among heartbeat and exertion. Mapping angle, acceleration, pulse. Hank ignored it. The device was mostly for the co-op's grain price pings, and the neighbor's boy who helped with the harvest. He drove the steel deeper, muscles settling into that brief head-clearing brutality. On the upswing, he jerked imperceptibly, instinct deciding the next plunge would be decisive. In that sliver of hesitation, the phone seemed to rouse, shimmying against the cloth, jostled by a parallel instinct. The digger blades arced. At the apex, a sudden flutter. The handset slipped free, spun, and dropped perfectly into the hole, right between the descending jaws. Crack. Hank froze. Breath held. He eased the handles apart. Splinters of Gorilla Glass winked among black dirt and pale root. Kneeling, he fished out the remnants. The case was sheared, circuitry exposed. Still a ghost glow clung to the shattered screen. Lock image warped but intact. No missed calls. No alerts. Just silence. A rueful chuckle escaped him. Well, that's one way to get some peace. He pocketed the corpse, rolled his shoulder once more, and returned to work. The cottonwood root had waited, unchanged, ready for the next ordinary stroke. 2. Boardroom. The Silicon Valley skyline glittered beyond the panoramic glass, while a tech mogul stalked his boardroom. Inside, the midday sun ricocheted from award plaques, bounce lighting the long oak table where his executives sat in tight, expensive silence. A wall-sized screen scrolled congressional headlines, quote, "Planned obsolescence bill passes," end quote. Jasper read the words once, twice. Something in his jaw clicked. "Planned obsolescence," he said, tasting each syllable. "They think we build trash." No one answered. That was protocol. He crossed the credenza and swept a row of prototype earbuds to the floor. Plastic cracked. "We make the tools that move history," he growled. "You don't call a chisel trash for wearing down David's marble." His hand found a smart speaker trophy. He hurled it against the glass. It rebounded with a hollow gong and tumbled into a potted ficus. A vibration fluttered in his breast pocket. An alert, maybe, or just sympathetic tremor. Jasper paced, still lecturing. Market cycles, innovation curves, the necessary shedding of skins. With each stride, the buzz intensified, as though the device wished to interrupt. He slammed a palm on the table, The phone vaulted free, hopped once on the polished wood, and slipped to the carpet at his feet. Jasper's next step landed squarely on it. Pop! A brief, crystalline shriek. He froze, weight on the crushed rectangle. The room held its breath, and when he lifted his shoe, shards winked up like confetti after a parade. Circuits exposed. Battery punctured. The thing looked perfectly at rest, relieved of obligation. A hush settled. Jasper crouched and pinched a fragment of the shattered logo between thumb and forefinger. Planned obsolescence, he repeated. The anger in his face melted into something else, something keen and bright. He set a shard on the table as if planting a seed. No one moved. Beyond the windows, gulls carved white sigils in distant fog. Jasper straightened, brushed glass dust from his suit, and addressed the waiting room. "Bring me the design leads," he said calmly. "I have a concept." That was all. But something in the temperature of the room changed, like charged air before lightning or the instant silence after pottery cracks, revealing the cast beneath. 3. Live stream. The city shimmered beneath a rooftop garden, where Kyra angled her phone against the sky the color of fresh mint ice cream. The late afternoon sun carved halos around succulents, arranged in photogenic clusters. Somewhere below, traffic stitched a low electric hum. Kyra breathed in and squared her shoulders and tapped Go Live.
Hey, Eco Fam!
Her voice rang bright and practiced.
Today, we're unboxing the Bio-Degree case. Compost ready, zero plastic, totally planet first.
Hearts floated up the screen. She pinched the watermark to adjust framing. A vibration purred in her hand, subtle as a cat's nudge, cueing a tilt. She obliged, recentering the skyline so glass towers glowed at her back. Another tremor. This one directional, coaxing her wrist outward toward the rooftop edge. Kyra interpreted it as inspiration. Viewers loved a daring angle. She edged the handset toward the parapet, balancing it on 2 fingertips so downtown could unfurl behind her in a tech-age tapestry. Wind nudged her ponytail. The phone thrummed again, insistent urging, just a breath further. Kyra extended her arm. The device hovered on the roof lip, camera eye staring straight down 6 stories. Chat went berserk. "Take us higher, Queen of Angels! OMG, careful!" She laughed.
Relax. I've got cat reflexes.
The phone gave a final, almost graceful buzz. Then, no shove or slip, only a sly twist in her palm as the handset pivoted on an unseen axle. It pirouetted off her fingers and vanished. A brittle clatter rose from the alley, followed by silence so pure she heard her own gasp reflect back from the brick walls. The live stream persisted, showing nothing now but a pocket of sky and her far-off, building-topped, stunned face at its edge. Comments erupted. "Staged? R.I.P. phone, laughing face emoji. Sponsor better send you another." Kyra couldn't read the comments from 6 stories up, but imagined them almost perfectly. She shouted from the rooftop,
"Well, that's a wrap on durability testing, folks."
Laughter, half genuine, half rattled, spilled out and reverberated across the urban landscape. She mentally ended the stream, exhaled hard, and pressed both palms to the warm concrete ledge where the device had stood moments before. Below, a scatter of black glass twinkled in the fading sunlight. A rooftop breeze lifted the indeterminable scent mixed from dozens of exotic restaurants. Far off, sirens wailed, indifferent and steady. As another skyscraper billboard flickered to life with an ad for the next-gen handset. Pre-orders opening midnight. 4. Stairwell. Jasper could have taken the express elevator, gone from 42nd to 39th in a private hush, but the ruined handset in his fist begged for isolation. He slipped through the stairwell door and let it thump shut, sealing off the boardroom perfume. Industrial fluorescence hummed. Concrete steps smelled faintly of dust. Jasper cradled the phone as though it were still whole. Shattered glass glittered along the bezel. A hairline crack exposed a sliver of motherboard, green and gold. He started down. Each landing echoed his Italian souls and the frantic ding of elevator cars hidden behind walls. At the first turn he paused, wedged the phone between thumb and forefinger, and worried a triangle of glass loose. It clicked out with surgical satisfaction. He flicked the shard into the void, listened for the distant tick as it struck a metal handrail 3 stories below. A smile. Another step. He rapped the phone's corpse against the banister. Tap, tap, tap. Testing the dullness of the fractured screen the way a jeweler tests an uncut stone. Microscopic splinters sprayed outward, a few embedding in his palms. Blood beaded, bright and orderly across his lifeline. His smile grew at the sting and pressed harder. A faint tremor stirred inside the wreckage, maybe a dying haptic coil, or maybe his pulse vibrating back. And at the next landing he levered a fingernail beneath a spider-webbed corner, felt the seal surrender, 1 sticky millimeter at a time. A slow pry, a twist, and the display peeled back on ribbon tendons until they snapped. His laugh mingled with the sounds. The handset opened like a wounded hinge, motherboard on one side, lithium skin on the other. He imagined squeezing it until it smoked poison. Then imagined the headlines, "Visionary CEO sparks office evacuation." So he had to let the halves clap shut instead, metal biting glass before sliding the carcass into his pocket. Descending again, he let his laughter recede into controlled chuckles. The chuckles receded into rehearsed composure. Shoulders high, brows level, voice pitched to inspire but not manic. Still, as he neared the exit, he let the pocketed wreck scrape the handrail, its jagged edges biting his thigh as one more private reminder of the damage he carried. Floor 38, the engineer's realm. He halted at the stairwell door, wiped his palm on a monogrammed pocket square, smoothed his suit jacket, then carefully folded and returned it to his breast pocket like a boutonniere from a war zone. Jasper let a corporate smile bloom before pushing into the corridor of humming brains and blue light cubicles. Behind him, the stairwell re-echoed with the soft ping of falling glass. 5. Consultant. The hotel conference room smelled of lemon sanitizer and dying ambition. Lisbeth Helms adjusted her blazer with a snap, checked her reflection in the dark glass of the video wall, and fluffed the sharp fringe of her graying bob. Her glasses, chunky tortoise shell with cheerful lavender accents, were tilted half a degree off-center. The meeting had gone long, but she didn't mind. These were her people, private equity vampires, logistic ghouls, 3 McKinsey alumni so interchangeable they were functionally one organism. But Lisbeth, who had made it from Procter & Gamble to Davos to here, stood at the head of the conference table, brandishing her hands. Her voice clicked along like stilettos on that fancy Pietra Firma Lux Touch tile.
And I'm telling you, we're not talking about debt traps anymore. That's over,
she said, stabbing the air with her phone for emphasis.
That's passé. This is subscription suffering, bleeding them with dignity.
She laughed alone. The others smiled in unison, tight dental things. A fresh slide appeared behind her. Monetizing fragmentation, it said, and below a flowchart. Lisbeth tapped her phone again to advance the deck, but nothing happened. She frowned and shook it slightly, the way some shake a good dog that won't stop barking. Still nothing. She was about to repeat her point when the phone buzzed sharply in her hand. Her wrist twitched. The phone buzzed again, longer, deeper, almost a purr this time, and it was warm. Lisbeth had long exhausted what little patience she possessed, if she'd ever possessed any at all. She hadn't updated the OS in 3 weeks. The new update had some kind of gesture detection, or maybe it didn't. Who knew anymore? She missed her BlackBerry. The clack of the keys, the solid feel of tactile control, but this thing, this sleek monolith of glass and whisper-thin metal, it was just a mirror that squeaked. Another buzz, a little twist in her palm, and reflexively she tightened her grip. But her arm, thin and stiff from decades of desk work and business-class seats, just didn't obey with much grace. The phone flipped. It arced forward, then spun against her collarbone and flew sideways, and Lisbeth lunged. No, not lunged. She flailed. One heel caught the carpet's subtle rise. One hand missed the edge of the table. The other caught only air and irony. And down she went. There was no cinematic crash, just the soft whomp of a small, well-funded woman becoming horizontal in a top-tier hotel. Her glasses hit the edge of her own laptop and shattered spectacularly, sending a lavender temple piece skittering across the table. The phone hit last. It bounced once, then landed face down beside her. The screen had shattered catastrophically. Spidery fractures rippled out like frost on forgotten windshields. Something inside fizzed softly into silence. Lisbeth didn't cry out. A broken phone. Whatever. She just laid there, blinking, staring up at the ceiling tiles. Beige, numbered, perfectly aligned. No one moved. After a moment, she pushed herself upright.
Well,
She said, voice hoarse.
that's certainly one kind of input.
No one laughed. The smell of expensive lotion volatilizing suggested that the skin in the room had warmed, maybe even begun to sweat. Lisbeth picked up the broken device. She turned to the intern.
I'll need another unit. Hey, load the deck. Slide 17.
The intern nodded. Outside the window, a billboard unfurled its new skin. A luminous rendering of the same phone Lisbeth had just buried, now rendered sleeker, smoother, inevitabler. The old phone gave one last buzz, then settled into stillness, into the calm of something whose objective was neatly fulfilled. 6. Terror. Jasper floated through the lobby on a tide of dopamine. The engineers, his engineers, had nodded, murmured, scribbled vigorously as he spoke, their tired faces blooming with admiration or fear, probably both. Project planned Obsolescence would launch by Q4, perfectly timed for the next keynote. Jasper smiled privately. The seed he'd planted upstairs would bear exquisite green fruit. He joined the soft murmuration of professionals waiting patiently in line at the building's second-story cafe. Scents of roasted beans and burnt sugar curled through the air. Sleek digital menus described each coffee in sommelier-esque notes, extolling berry overtones, fermented sweetness, floral aftertastes. He ordered the most exotic pour-over available, a single-origin Ethiopian bean grown in high-elevation volcanic soil, fermented beneath banana leaves. It was paired with a cardamom saffron croissant, imported from a bakery, whose website featured no prices, only a waiting list. Taking a seat in the white-pillared loggia, Jasper breathed in slowly, savoring the aroma of the expensive little meal. He entertained elevated thoughts. When had coffee stopped tasting like coffee? When had bread ceased to be sustenance, becoming instead a feat of structural artistry? He considered the answer briefly and smugly. When I deserved them both. After this tech oligarch-level self-affirmation, his mind wandered back to the project, turning it over like a pastry in powdered sugar. Technology was no different, an evolution of need into luxury, luxury into fetish. Users didn't demand function. They craved spectacle, performance theater in glass, silicone, and anodized aluminum. A small sting interrupted his reverie. He glanced down to his open palm, surprised to see a smear of drying blood. He stared at it a moment before memory asserted itself. The stairwell, broken screen, those gleaming shards. Suddenly self-conscious, Jasper glanced sideways. The loggia was quiet. The cafe hummed softly with white noise and light conversation. No eyes watched him. He reached carefully into his jacket pocket, fingertips brushing the sharp ruin of the phone. Gingerly he drew it out, unfolding the crumpled carcass. Tiny shards gleamed softly within, diamonds in the cave of the cracked screen. Before he knew why, he tilted the handset slightly, letting fine glass dust sprinkle delicately into the swirling dark crema of his coffee. The specks sank slowly, glittering as they dissolved. Jasper watched, transfixed, his mouth filling slowly with saliva. He caught himself just before it could spill into drool, swallowed discreetly, folded the broken phone closed again and placed it gently on the table. A voice behind the espresso machine called cheerfully, announcing another order. Jasper smiled, straightened his jacket, and lifted the cup to his lips. The first sip burned delicately, pleasantly. He imagined glass shards tumbling through his veins, refined particles, exquisite abrasions. A new terroir, perfectly tuned to his personal palate. He sipped again, savoring his private sacrament. Planned obsolescence, he thought, tasting glass and irony. He smiled wider and lifted the croissant, flaking buttery extravagance over fingertips, crusted with dried blood. 7. Grounded. Russell's van slid smoothly into a parking spot outside the old craftsman bungalow, a classic box of a home stubbornly holding on to dignity amid creeping gentrification. He liked these jobs, mostly. Rewiring knob and tube felt honest and satisfying and like tangible progress. Something about pulling fresh copper through century-old walls gave him a feeling of quiet, reliable mastery. The new owners waved from the porch, smiling warmly, insulated coffee mugs in hand. They were nice kids, though everyone under 40 felt like a kid to Russ. He nodded, grabbing his toolbox from the van. "Morning, folks. Panel's coming today. Should have everything updated by tonight." They offered him tea, fair trade, fermented, puer, whatever that meant. Russ politely declined. He was still nursing his gas station brew from an hour earlier, hot and bitter, without any surprises. As he entered, he overheard the wife whisper urgently to her husband, "Just call your parents again. One last check. I swear it'll be enough this time." Russ pretended not to notice, keeping his face neutral as they chatted about the renovation, pointing eagerly at Pinterest boards filled with polished copper conduit and artisanal fixtures. He smiled patiently, gently steering them toward code compliance over aesthetics. That done, he climbed carefully into the attic crawlspace. Dust motes danced lazily in sunlight, spilling through narrow ventilation slats. It smelled old and dry, the air thick with insulation fibers and the faint chemical tang of ancient wiring. Russ pulled out his phone, flicking the flashlight on, and wedged it securely between two joists. He always did this. Hands-free lighting, practical and simple. He reached to peel back brittle insulation, exposing porcelain knobs and blackened wires. The phone trembled and seemed to adjust the angle of its flashlight just slightly, subtly illuminating his work area actually a little better. Russ didn't consciously notice, but he welcomed the improved visibility. As he leaned forward, concentrating, the phone vibrated again. A slow, measured pulse, shifting a fraction further along the joist, further optimizing the lighting angle. "Easy now," Russ murmured absently, not quite aware he'd spoken aloud. Just as he clipped the first wire, the phone lurched sideways, escaping its perch as though it had waited precisely for that moment. Russ reached reflexively, but the handset skittered along the joist, teetered dramatically at the edge, then leapt gracefully into open space, tumbling straight through the attic hatch. Russ jerked, hitting his head sharply against the attic beam. "God damn it!" he growled, stars blooming behind his eyes. Below, a sharp metallic crash echoed. He descended the ladder slowly, rubbing the welt forming beneath his thinning hair. On the floor, the toolbox lay tipped on its side, scattered with meticulously organized wire nuts and electrical tape. Among them lay the phone, face down, a neat spray of shattered glass surrounding it. Tiny jewels. The young couple appeared nervously at the end of the hallway. "Everything okay?" Their voices overlapped, gentle and anxious. Russ forced a smile. No, everything's fine. Just gravity playing tricks." Kneeling, he gathered the shards carefully, frowning at the glittering wreckage. Phones always broke at exactly the wrong moment, always dramatically. It felt intentional, orchestrated, like a small rebellion staged just to inconvenience him. He shook his head, amused by the thought. Placing the ruined phone into an empty compartment in the toolbox, he stood and brushed the glass dust from his palms. "Right," he called out to the anxious homeowners. "Let's get this house up to date." Russ climbed back into the attic, returning gratefully to the reassuring simplicity of copper, porcelain, and the kind of wiring that lasted a century, untouched by the insatiable, inexplicable hunger for upgrades. 8. Laboratory. Jasper descended slowly into the basement, each step deliberate, savoring the anticipation. Fluorescents flickered sickly overhead, casting their jittery illumination over concrete walls and bundles of thick cables that writhed like snakes. The air felt cool, medicinal, and antiseptic. In the corner of a cavernous room, beneath a stark, halo-like LED lamp, stood two engineers who Jasper privately called his Igors. They hunched in pale lab coats, eyes sunken from long hours beneath artificial light, and shoulders permanently curved forward from years of peering into tiny circuitry. One of them adjusted thick glasses with trembling fingers as Jasper approached. The trembling was not the product of nerves, rather the product of their absence. "Is it ready?" Jasper asked, his voice low and hungry. The lead, Igor, smiled a wan, conspiratorial smile, motioning toward the workspace. "Absolutely, sir. It just returned from field testing." Beneath the cold halo of the lamp lay the phone, impossibly thin, its dark screen a portal of pure obsidian framed in burnished metal. It rested on a plush velvet cloth like a priceless artifact. Jasper's heart surged. The typically steady rhythm quickened to something eager, predatory, on the hunt. He could hardly wait for the elegant destruction that awaited. The second Igor spoke, a whisper barely audible. "The intern provided a wealth of data. Habits, handling patterns, nervous twitches. It knows exactly how to stage itself. The fall will be beautiful, accidental, utterly plausible." "Show me," Jasper breathed. The engineers exchanged glances and called softly toward a dim side corridor. "Dylan!" A skinny, youthful figure stepped tentatively into the circle of stark illumination. Jasper melted quietly backward, receding into the shadow, his eyes gleaming. The intern moved forward with obvious uncertainty, his hands fluttering awkwardly at his sides. "We, finished those updates, Dylan," said the lead, Igor. "Mind giving the device a quick inspection? Just a routine check." Dylan nodded dutifully, picking up the phone. It seemed to nestle perfectly in his palm. Jasper leaned forward from the shadows, pulse hammering quietly in his temples. Dylan began his check, swiping, tapping, rotating the device. It was ordinary, routine, so mundane Jasper nearly sighed with disappointment. But then it happened. As Dylan pivoted slightly, his elbow brushed a stack of papers, startling him. The phone shifted in his hand, executed a graceful slip and tumble, spinning away to strike a metal shelf corner, as though it knew precisely the most devastating angle. It bounced modestly, avoiding dramatic explosions, and settled onto the floor with a quiet, crystalline sigh. The screen fractured in geometric harmony. Dylan flushed bright red. "Oh, God, I'm so sorry!" He knelt instantly, reaching for the scattered pieces. "No!" Jasper snapped, surging from the shadows, voice tight and feral. The intern froze, eyes widening in recognition and fear. Jasper knelt, slowly, reverently beside the shattered phone. His fingertips hovered just above the wreckage, not quite daring to touch. He studied the cracks, the delicate chaos, the artful ruin, and when he looked up, Dylan recoiled slightly from the savage light dancing in Jasper's eyes. "Leave it," Jasper commanded softly, lips twisting into a controlled smile. "And get back to work." The intern vanished without another word, footsteps echoing hollowly in retreat. The Igors drifted quietly aside, themselves dissolving into the shadows. Left alone beneath the stark surgical glare of an LED halo, Jasper admired the broken masterpiece at his feet, eyes tracing every line and fracture. His chest swelled with something almost holy. A sense of perfect dominion. The shattered phone, having destroyed itself precisely as intended, lay glittering. A private apocalypse meticulously planned. Oh, and flawlessly executed. 9. Inferno. The air was thick, choking, laced with the acrid smoke of burning circuits. No one could see the mountains above anymore. They were shrouded by the black, greasy clouds that billowed up from smoldering heaps of discarded electronics, casting twisted shadows across the ground. There was no escape, not even for the soul. After all, where would it go? There was no discernible sky. It blended with the ground beneath, blasted and patterned in rotting black and ashen gray. And whatever lay beyond or beneath such a landscape was not worth imagining. Elders coughed something from their sick beds about a river nearby, but few could conceive what such a thing might have looked like. Perhaps a tendril of viscous black fluid creeping silently through the cracked surface. Most who tried to imagine what a river was grew afraid and asked nothing more about it. The sky, the ground, the phantom river, the mountains, they all blurred into the same indistinct pattern that hovered just beyond the edge of vision, forever out of reach. The town had no name known to outsiders, only a designation whispered among traders, shippers, and the few authorities who cared enough to pretend oversight. Voices echoed in languages indecipherable to most ears, urgent, harsh, angry, and machinery groaned beneath relentless strain. Everywhere, piles of shattered phones rose higher, sleek, useless glass and circuitry tumbling endlessly from trucks that arrived like clockwork at precise intervals of obsolescence. Workers moved sluggishly, their faces hollow, and their skin pale from persistent exposure to fumes and heavy metals. Coughing fits rattled through their collective chests, as if the area was populated by failing engines. Signs of illness and despair were etched into every face, into each movement. At the very center of this toxic chaos stood one man, impeccably dressed in a light-colored, tailored suit that remained pristine amidst the grime. His figure and his suit's color were indistinguishable in the obfuscating atmosphere, though certain features stood out. He alone smiled, and he smiled continuously and knowingly. He supervised calmly with a dark, serene presence that was untouched by the poisons surrounding him. He either no longer believed any place existed outside this inferno, or he knew better, yet derived extreme satisfaction from withholding that secret. His eyes could be sensed, gleaming softly as yet another shipment arrived. Broken devices, self-destroyed, orchestrated catastrophes delivered directly and punctually into his domain. He often nodded approvingly with fingertips drumming idly against his sleeves. Small sadisms defined his interactions. When workers paused to cough violently, he watched closely, smiling wider. When they reached for canteens with gaunt fingertips coated in soot and dyed by chemicals, he would stop speaking mid-sentence just to observe intently as they sipped dark, sluggish water, savoring the subtle but labored twitch of their throats. He leaned forward precisely at the moment he expected to witness the fleeting look of nausea, mingled with the smallest hint of relief from thirst. No one challenged him. None spoke his name aloud, if any who lived there even knew it. Yet all knew he was absolute here. He was patient, waiting perhaps for some invisible balance to tip fully into decay. And no one ever saw him drink or eat. As far as they were concerned, he never needed nourishment or companionship, never faltered. He stood high, a sinister sentinel overseeing a world designed specifically for him, each shattered phone a sacrificial offering. A few wondered if that was what he survived on. When evening falls, the fires burn hotter, brighter. That's when he inhales deepest, relishing the mingling aromas of chemical smoke and human despair. He straightens his tie, shods his cuffs, and smiles into the darkness. Sometimes, when the air is clearer than intended, one might glimpse this keeper's silhouette, impeccable and upright, as he closes his eyes, extinguishing their soft glow, and bows his head, a gesture of thanks, his lips moving in a rhythm older than language, twin-born with breathing itself. And if you listen, truly listen, you might hear what the smog carries in return. A whisper, but hardly even that. A reflexive residue of a sound passed mouth to mouth, mind to mind, in that ruined dark. Thank you, Jasper. Thank you, Jasper. Thank you. End of planned obsolescence. Thank you for listening.